Hi, Lakeview, and welcome to week 2 of our spiritual formation moments. Hasn't it been like 8 weeks already? Doesn't it feel like forever? We're all settling into this new reality, and it's our hope that with these moments, we might be able to give you some practices that help you navigate all of the change and the chaos that's going on in your life and in our world. This is an unprecedented moment because usually when we suffer, we do it individually or we do it in smaller pockets of people. So someone loses a family member and that family suffers, but there's this larger community that can hold them and bring a little bit of stability in the chaos. Or someone loses their job and there's a larger community that can provide a container for the losses that they're suffering. But we are in a really unique situation right now because our suffering is this communal experience. There's not the usual landmarks that we rely on to help us navigate or the containers to hold us when we look outside of our own worlds. This communal experience is really disorienting, as all suffering is. But I also think that there's kind of an ironic invitation to this communal experience of compassion, even while we're being asked to keep distance from one another socially. And I think this communal compassion or empathy comes through the invitation to learn how to suffer, to learn how to bow to the wind of loss that is blowing through our world. And the question that is being asked to us right now, especially as a community as of the followers of Jesus, is how. Often we want to skip over to the question of why, and that's supernatural. But I would say that almost always, when we ask the question why, things start to go sideways. We end up blaming someone else, or we make light of a situation that's super painful. And wanting to answer the question why is also almost always a way that we try to avoid the pain of suffering, a way of holding it at arm's length. And the truth is that we don't have any answers to the question of why, other than scientific answers. Why should we wash our hands? Why should we stay at a distance from one another? And people may look to us as followers of Jesus for answers to why, or we may be searching for answers of why, but we don't have that answer. Instead, I think we have an answer to how. How do we suffer? How do we not bypass, but instead stay with the losses and the difficulties of this experience so that we can learn what these losses have to teach us? We haven't really been given good tools to grieve losses or even to feel sadness, especially in our Western world, and I think even in Western Christianity. So often when really hard things happen, we aren't expecting them. We haven't been told that suffering is a part of life, but it is. It comes to all of us. And so when it does happen, when we try to make meaning out of it, we often don't know what to do with it. And so we try to fix it, or we try to find ways to deny it, or overcome it through willpower or self-help. And some of us don't even know that we have these ways of dealing with suffering, that we have these built-up defenses until suffering comes our way and blows them out of the way. And we're left a little bit like the little piggies sitting in the middle of their houses of straw. So then when those defenses are gone, the challenge becomes to learn how to stay with our suffering so that it transforms us. We are called to let our sadness lead us to compassion, to feel it so that it can transform us. And we are uniquely able to do this as followers of Jesus because he is the suffering one. He has been, is, and always will be suffering for the sake of the world. I used to think that Jesus joined us in our suffering, But now I realize that we actually join Jesus in his suffering. He's already there. He has been suffering alongside the world as long as creation has been suffering. And so when we enter into our own losses and sadness, as we do so, we can trust that we're going to meet Jesus. We don't have to be afraid. But how? Most of us don't know how to stay with our sadness or how to make room for suffering. And so here are some practices, some ideas, some spiritual formation challenges for this week to notice and stay with your losses. Pay attention, first of all, to the times when you feel afraid or sad or overwhelmed. Pay attention to your stress responses. Maybe you feel it in your body. Maybe it's your heart hurts, or you have a pain in your neck or your back. Maybe it shows itself physically. Maybe you get irritable with the people around you. Or maybe you feel sluggish, or you kind of feel like you're losing your life force. Maybe you cry or feel overwhelmed. Stay with that feeling. Ask yourself, what does this feeling teach you about where you are most vulnerable? So this is how I've noticed it happens with me. I'll be sitting at my desk, working happily on whatever it is I'm working on, when all of a sudden it strikes me that my children are on their 500th episode of Prison Break, and I start to feel anxious and irritable, and I want to go fix the problem. But what I've learned to do is to take a deep breath, to remember that we are all okay. I don't need to march into the basement and start demanding how much time they've had on screen time, and then tell them that their brains are rotting, or whatever it is that us as parents like to do in those moments of fear. Instead, I remind myself that we're not doing this perfectly. That's okay. Nobody is. I can take a beat and take a breath and make a plan. And if I do that, what I realize is that the real issue isn't really about the kids watching too much TV. The real issue is my own feelings of inadequacy around being a mom, my feelings of loss as they're growing up, my fear about whether I've done all the things that I should do in order to help them be good human beings as they leave my house. And if I jump up and go bawl them out right away for watching too much TV, I've missed what's really going on. I've missed what this feeling is teaching me about my own sadness and loss. So, what are the ways that you are feeling sadness or loss? And do you undermine it? Do you keep busy or try to control things or get angry at somebody else? Usually that's your partner. We often like to take our pain and make it and put it on somebody else, scapegoat it, because we have a hard time looking at it in ourselves. So notice how you do that. And then, as these feelings teach you about your pain and your losses, make time to feel those things. Some of you are really good at accessing your feelings of sadness and loss, so all you'll have to do is get yourself a cup of coffee or a cup of tea and sit for a little while and just let yourself feel your losses. Some of us need a little help tuning into our sadness and our losses, so maybe there's a song that helps you name how you feel. Just make time to name those feelings. Some of us need help in other ways. We need to go for a run or do some kickboxing. I don't know. Some of us are more physically motivated. If that's your way of feeling emotion, do that. Or you could paint a picture or write a poem or write a song. Find a way to express what you're feeling. This week's spiritual formation prompt and help will be on how to write a lament. So check out our formation exercise on our website at lakeviewchurch.com, and I will give you some suggestions for writing a lament. Laments are located in the Psalms, which is the prayer book of David, where he put down all of his feelings in front of God in prayer. And he gives us some tools and some tricks for telling God about our sadness and our losses. So, you might also experience these losses as you make space for those closest to you to feel loss. As your kids maybe express the things that they're feeling sad about, or when your family or your friends express their own losses. Then tell God about them. Express your losses to God. Make space not only to feel your losses, but also to let God feel them along with you. Let those tender spots be a place where you commune with God. And do you know what will happen when you start to do this? You will begin to connect with others in their losses too. You will overcome social distance with empathy. As your defenses melt away, you will become more tender enough to see where people are hurting, and this will give you a new imagination for how to help. You know what happens when we make room for the sad things in our own lives? We become softer. We recognize the same sadness and suffering and frustration in other people, and it becomes a way to truly connect with them. This is what Paul says in 2 Corinthians. Praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us all in our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. For just as we share abundantly in the sufferings of Christ, so also our comfort abounds through Christ. If we are distressed, it is for your comfort and salvation. If we are comforted, it is for your comfort, which produces in you patient endurance of the same sufferings we suffer. And our hope for you is firm, because we know that just as you share in our sufferings, so also you share in our comfort. Paul knew the way that suffering can lead to compassion and connection. And this is what Henry Nouwen says about it. There is real pain in your heart, a pain that truly belongs to you. You know that you cannot avoid, ignore, or repress it. And it is this pain that reveals to you how you are called to live in solidarity with the broken human race. Practice noticing and feeling your losses this week, and let them transform you. We're in this together.